because courage is something that doesn't come naturally in regard to, well, certainly to my own experience. If there's something that I really want to do, I might feel tender about it, or I might want to hold it very closely and not let it see the light of day because I'm afraid it's going to be crushed, or somebody's going to say the wrong thing, or I won't have the follow through. So I'll just suffer in silence while I have my dream and smother it to death,
Hello, you are listening to the Late Bloomer Living podcast, where we are reimagining and redefining what it means to be in midlife, where we are gathering energy, momentum, and excitement for our next chapter via candid conversations with other midlifers about their own pivots, pitfalls, and triumphs. I'm Yvonne Marchese, your host, and I'm so happy you're here. Do you ever feel antsy? Like something's off? Like you just need a change? You might not know what you want to do, though. Oh, that can be frustrating. One of the things I love about my guest this week, among many, is how she is courageous about following her curiosity. Kriste Peoples is a Denver-based writer, producer, women's trail running coach, and outdoorist. That wasn't always her gig, though. She started off as a graphic designer working in New York City, where she dabbled in singing and performing while she was there. But she had an aha moment that led her to move to Arizona to go to graduate school for writing, and she didn't stop exploring there. I can't wait for you to hear her story. But I do want to mention, stick around for the end of the episode. I have an exercise that you can use to help you if you are feeling stuck about what you want to do. And also, I want to invite you to the next get-together for the Midlife Uprising community for women that's happening on October 11th. I'll have more information for you about that at the end. So let's go ahead and jump into Kriste's story. Without further ado, here's Kriste Peoples. Let's go. Hey, Kriste, thanks so much for being with me today.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you. It's so funny because before we hit record, we were talking about the funny way we met. So I've been following you on Instagram, and then all of a sudden, one day I get this weird message from you on Instagram, and I'm like, doesn't sound like this person that I have an impression of. This sounds weird. So I got in touch with you then on Facebook, and you were like, yep, indeed, I've been hacked, and blah, blah. And then we started a whole conversation. Turns out we both know Johanna Walker, and then boom, boom, boom. And then I'm like, well, Kriste, would you like to be on my podcast?
And Kriste said, yeah, let's talk.
And the good news is you got your Instagram account back.
Yes, I haven't fallen on my head and suddenly become a devotee of cryptocurrency investing, like the messages said. Yeah.
Crazy. Well, congratulations, because I think it can be hard for people to get their accounts back. So I'm really glad that worked for you.
Yeah. And the upside of that is that I actually met people that I hadn't been in contact with before, such as yourself. And I also rekindled some connections with people that, I'd been friends with from way back, but maybe we lost touch. And so I try to really look at it as being a teachable experience or something to learn from.
Well, one of the reasons that I was fascinated by you from the get-go was that you're doing this adventure work with women. And I knew that you had the meditation background, and so I was curious about how that all kind of came together for you. So I think that's the story I'd like for people to hear. I mean, I know you lived in New York for some time.
Mm-hmm.
And you went back to school. Was it your mid-30s that you went back to school?
Yeah. I was in New York directly after college and felt like I wanted to just live in the world because so much of it was passing me by living in or having grown up in Virginia Beach. And so I had a couple of relatives there. I packed a little Foot Locker and, made my way to Brooklyn and just really kind of experienced myself in a different setting and learned about what I liked, what I wanted to be, how I wanted to live, and so there were a number of different directions that I kind of dabbled in. And then finally I said, I want to, after about 13 years, I said it's time to try something else. But if I want to get out of New York, because I felt like I'm just kind of hustling around from gig to gig, I've kind of done so much of the exploring and you know, I don't know about
What were you doing?
some.
So the gigs that you were doing, what was your like what sustained you in New York?
So I was a graphic designer for
Uh-huh.
some time. I was also doing a lot of it was around publishing. So I was doing graphic design, I was doing production work for magazines. So it was a lot of desktop publishing stuff. And then I was also a singer for a while. So I was bouncing around doing singing gigs, singing at
Mm-hmm.
weddings and bars and different clubs, like with varying degrees of fun and
Uh-huh.
effectiveness. I
Okay.
would say, you
As
know,
a performer, I can totally I yes, as a former. Yeah.
right? Like one night I'm in some club getting a standing ovation, or maybe somebody comes up to me and talks about how good it was or how they were moved or whatever. Then the next night I'm singing to the bartender and the blender going off every you know. And so and then I have
Oh,
the
I'm having flashbacks, Christy. Wow, wow, wow. I had a
yeah.
friend I was with this theater company in New York for several years and did some great work with them. They were a terrific company off Broadway, and there was a really talented actress in the rep company who was very funny. And she, I remember before a performance one night, she's like, "All right, folks, here we go. Another night of craptastic theater for family and friends."
Right. And that's isn't that sometimes that's what it is. That's a part of it. Oh yeah. I can like feel myself like wanting to cringe at some of the memories, But and here's the thing, like when I left New York, I said, I don't want to be 40 just dragging my thing around from pillar to post trying to get gigs and trying to find myself or whatever. But I'm in my 50s now. It's like, hey, I'm still discovering myself. Absolutely, I want to be in that experience of finding out who I am and discovering and dipping my toes in different waters. I want to approach at least some things with beginner's mind and not feeling like I have to know everything, because I will never know it all. And
Amen.
so
Amen. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the wonderful experience of having done that, and continuing to approach life like that, is that we can have experiences like these where we laugh and we can cringe, but not in a way that breaks the heart.
Right.
And so by the time I decided to leave New York to move to Arizona to go to graduate school, I said, I feel like this is a natural next step or a natural conclusion, like going toward the other dream, moving towards something that feels alive for me. And I
And what
hadn't,
was that? You went to grad school for what?
yeah, I did an MFA in creative writing.
In creative writing,
And
right.
because I'd wanted to do it. And I told myself I didn't want to get to the place where I felt too afraid. I said, I don't want to get too old or become too afraid to pursue the thing that I want. And so knowing that, okay, this isn't a surefire guarantee for making a whole lot of money or anything like that, but it is a guarantee that I will have given myself permission to do the thing that I've wanted to do for a long time, that I was, interestingly enough, too afraid to pursue in college. Because in college, I felt like, I want to do this. I want to I want to be an English major. But my teacher, one of my professors, who was actually, and yeah, who, who supported or who was somewhat encouraging, he said, I think you have skills, but there's no money in it. And I didn't realize at the time that he was, disgruntled, and I gave him a little too much airtime in my head. And so
As we
I,
do. As we
yeah,
do.
as
Yeah.
as we do. And then there's that whole thing of deferring to authority and people who know better. I'm using my air quotes. And so I went in a different direction. But as I was telling you off camera before we got on to this conversation, that I spent a lot of those New York years in publishing. So, which would have definitely lent itself to an English degree or a writing degree.
Right.
But somehow we find those avenues, or they find us, if the desire is really, if the desire is there and the passion for it, or the current steers us in that direction. And I mentioned to you that I was in graphic design, and I used to work at this magazine. You remember Rosie O'Donnell came out with a magazine for a hot minute.
Yeah,
And
I
it was
remember that.
Yeah. And it was styled in the fashion of the Oprah magazine, where she was on the cover.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was working on Rosie for a while. And there is this as you're setting up the layouts, before the copy is final and all the stories are like edited, before they get poured in, you know what the word count is. And so you put in what's called dummy text. And so that was part of my job in setting up the layouts, to make sure there's room for all of the text that's going to go in there. And so I used to sneak in titles and a little bit of like writing like the first paragraph or so about the story. And so the editor-in-chief was reviewing one of my layouts one day, and I heard her say, she was like, wait, this is supposed to be dummy text. Oh, who did this? Somebody has missed their calling. Oh. And I heard that, and I said, oh, no, I haven't, lady. I am getting out of here. And so it took me a couple of years from that moment, but I heard that. I mean, I really heard that in a way that just really lit that fire and reminded me, you know what? There are other dreams to get to.
Yeah. It's so amazing. Sometimes we all I think we want permission. We want somebody to acknowledge that thing that we want is indeed within our grasp, and she did that without meaning to, perhaps.
She did that. She didn't mean to, because it was definitely a passing comment. Oh, they've missed their calling, kind of. It was really a kind of throwaway comment, but it really landed with me. So yeah, she helps to remind me. I didn't even tell her that it was me, that I was the one who had done that. But that's the thing, like when I firmly believe that when we're ready for a different experience, when we're ready for a change, we will hear the world around us will kind of give us or will reflect that to us. And maybe it's in, a bit of a conversation that we overhear, or maybe it's the page that we land on in a book, or like going on to social media, we like land on a reel or a blurb
Right.
or something.
And then we need to
Yeah.
have the awareness, like we
Mm-hmm.
have to like actually pay attention.
Paying
And
attention.
then not only that, but have a little follow through, like a little courage to actually take a step in the direction of that, right? Because that's the real
That's
scary part.
That's right. Yeah. The willingness to do it. Otherwise, that comment could have landed very differently for me. It could have been, oh, yeah, it is over for me. I won't ever get that opportunity because, I'll forever
Mm-hmm.
be doomed just to sneak in words that's supposed to be dummy text, you know. But I feel like you definitely said a lot there when you said a little bit of courage, because courage is something that doesn't come naturally in regard to, well, certainly to my own experience. If there's something that I really want to do, I might feel tender about it, or I might want to hold it very closely and not let it see the light of day, because I'm afraid it's going to be crushed, or somebody's going to say the wrong thing, or I won't have the follow through. So I'll just suffer in silence while I have my dream and smother it to death,
I know. And we do it. We do it
We
all
do
the
it.
time, right?
Yeah.
So my goodness. So you had the courage to make that change, and off you go to Arizona. And so then where what happened? Because I know you've had so many there's been like a lot of pivots and a lot of changes for you along the way.
Hmm. Well, I said I was done with singing, but singing wasn't done with me. And so I wound up
Oh.
at a cheese and wine bar singing a little bit, like just a little bit while I
Uh,
was there. And I was writing for a local lifestyle magazine. And when it came time to graduate, I knew that I didn't want to stay in Phoenix because it it wasn't singing to me, to
mm-hmm.
interestingly enough. And so I said, okay, I don't want to go back to New York because I left for a reason. I want to have a different experience. And so I said, I do want to go east though. And I think Philly makes sense. Didn't want to go back to Virginia. I wanted to move forward. So I said, I'm going to go to Philly, and I'm still in a good proximity to New York and Virginia. And so for the first time, because I went to Arizona sight unseen. I'd never been to Arizona before. I just called U-Haul. Once I got my acceptance letter, I called U-Haul and said, okay, I'm going to get a van
Wow,
and drive
talk
one
about
way.
courage. Holy
And
cannoli.
then I, I just felt like this is it. It didn't even feel like courage. It just felt like this is the thing. There's no other thing. This is it. And so this time I said, and I moved to New York that way too. I hadn't really been there but I did stay with a couple of cousins for a month before I moved out into a share. And into a room that was so tiny, I wrote home to my family saying, this room is so small, I have to step outside to change my mind. Anyway,
New York apartments. Yep.
New
That.
York
Yep.
apartments. So, so this time in Philly, I said, or with the idea of going to Philly, I reached out to some people I knew. I said, hey, can I come stay with you for a few days? I want to explore the town. I want to get set up with some job agencies, some career placement places. And I want to, just kind of tool around and see what I'm up for. Because I figure you need to do the adult thing here and investigate before you go, Kriste. You've never done that before. Now we're turning over a new leaf. So as it came time to leave Phoenix, and I've got the U-Haul all set to go to Philly, I still felt like, this isn't quite working for me. What? And I remember standing in my apartment just looking up, well, universe, if there's something else, I'm available to it because Philly, I'll go, but there's something else. So my friend Hope calls me from she calls me and she lives in Chicago. Kriste, what are you gonna do now that you've graduated? What's your next plan? I said, well, I'm going to Philly. I got the U-Haul pointed in that direction, but it's really not singing to me. And sure enough, she says, well, you should come to Chicago. Chicago could use someone like you. And it was like a call to arms or something like, yes,
Wow.
I'm going to do it. And so it's like, that makes sense. I'm coming to Chicago. Here again, never been to Chicago, but my friend is there. And she says, if I can do it, then I can do it.
I love it.
So I call U-Haul. I say, hey, plans have changed. I'm driving all my junk to Chicago instead of Philly. And so now, mind you, I've like left probably all of my winter clothes in New York. They're, strewn across all the vintage shops and secondhand stores and Goodwills by that point. And I wind up in Chicago in September in the final hours of warm weather. And all I've got are like prairie dresses and these little
Arizona gear. Right, right.
thin things. Yeah. So I worked there for a while and again, still little dribbles and drabbles of doing music, still doing a little bit of the advertising, graphic design and layout stuff. And I was volunteering with a theater company too. They actually helped women who had been in prison transition back to um I, life outside of prison.
Yeah.
And so that was a great experience for me. And I said, I was telling another friend, I don't want to be part of the problem anymore here because advertising, a lot of it was for catalogs and circulars that you get in the mail, the ones that you kind of flip through before you throw in the garbage,
Mm-hmm.
and I said, I just don't want to be part of that anymore. And I said, maybe because I was starting to get into meditation and I had a kind of soft off and on practice. And I said, maybe I'll just go work in one of those new age bookstores. And here again, publishing, being around books. And so I was working with someone who was a speaker and a teacher who had written a book, and his career was really growing. And so he needed a second person. And so that was the work. I wound up, oh, well, there's an interesting piece in the middle of that. So my friend said, no, you're not going to go work at one of those little shops. You're going to write a letter to people whose work you admire, and you're going to say, hey, I have these particular skills. I'd love to help you with your work. I admire you, and I would love to do what you do at some point. And I want to help you, because
Yeah.
you have helped me. She was like, you're going to write a letter. And so I was like, okay.
That's a good friend. That's a good friend. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Wow. Okay. So then what happened?
And so I wrote a letter. I wrote a letter to 4 people. One person, the guy, he hired me in Chicago. The one person passed away, and the other 2 people I have since worked with numerous times.
Wow.
So it was interesting. And then in Chicago, I never really got much traction there. I think because the way I arrived, I just felt, I'm just cold here. I don't have the juice to like build a community here. I just felt exhausted
Mm.
and didn't quite, root myself in Chicago. So when the opportunity came to move to Colorado, the guy I was working with said, um, hey, I want to get out of the city. I want to live closer to my family, and that's in Colorado. And so if you still want to keep working together, I'll bring you out there. And so I was like, great. I didn't have confidence that the job was going to last, but I was like, it's a way to get me out there.
Uh-huh.
And sure enough, I got to Colorado sight unseen.
Wow.
Well, no, he did bring me out once to kind of check it out. And so, but I didn't really investigate beyond that. So anyway, got to Colorado, fell in love with the mountains,
It's
and
gorgeous out there. I lived there for about 4 years in the early 90s. Beautiful.
beautiful.
Beautiful. Yeah.
And I had never, I'd been in big cities, and it hadn't really occurred to me to to ever even entertain living like that. And I thought, okay, it's a mountain town. I've been in cities, I can do it. But then I realized, oh, this this is very different. I feel very isolated here. There's no diversity here in Boulder where I was living. And
Oh,
so I
yeah.
took to the trails and nature, because nature didn't judge me. Nature welcomed me as I was. And it felt really good too, because I was always a an active person. And so I started hiking and running and getting various levels of training on how to do it with more agency and efficiency, and to do it safely, to navigate safely on the trails and everything.
Because you're
And
talking about trail running, right? Like
trail,
this wasn't just hiking that you were doing. I mean, although you were doing that, it was the trail running that you got the training for. Is that right?
yeah. So I got training because I was learning to run again, because initially when I arrived in Colorado, I would be winded just trying to get to my apartment at the
Yeah.
top of the stairs. I'm like, oh my
The
God.
altitude's no joke. Yeah.
Yeah. I was
Yeah.
like, this is how it ends. I can't breathe. What happened? It's been a good life. Oh, well.
Go on without me.
That's right. I've been to the mountain. Well, there we go. And so I realized that, oh, this is acclimation. And if I actually move and get active again, that's going to help me. And so uh I started to hike and run as I was able. And then I started to get training in trail running, because there's a lot of stuff to learn that, for me, not having been in the mountains before Colorado, really, um, there was a lot to learn about how to run uh, in the mountains, how to run at altitude, how to run without running out of steam. And so then the more I learned there, the more I wanted to learn, and the more I wanted to share that with other people. Because here again, I didn't see many people. I saw even fewer people on the trails who looked like me. Um, and so I realized part of that was probably because of just not knowing where to go or how to do it for some people. Because, Colorado or the Denver Boulder area is full of transplants,
Yes.
and many of whom, shared my story, like coming from cities or whatever, and maybe not mountain living. So, got some certifications on learning how to move safely in nature, and how to enjoy it so that you can do it for longevity. And then I started working, bringing women out and training them in trail running, and taking women out for hikes and doing all sorts of stuff in nature. And um, in the years since, while I was doing that, I was also working on my or cultivating a meditation or spiritual practice, and being in nature, it was like hand in glove. Being in nature, meditation,
They do
um
go well together.
greater
Absolutely.
awareness. Yes, it's
Yeah.
just all, yeah, linked in together. And then I started doing some training in meditation teaching, and so that's how I started to kind of fuse the two, at least in my own mind. So I wasn't necessarily leading a mindfulness run, but I would always bring in elements of mindfulness when I was out with people on the trail. Let's pause for a moment and just take note of where we are. It's not about your pace, it's not about how you're faring relative to your neighbor. We are out in nature. You can draw energy and resilience from nature, from the elements. Take a deep breath, stick your hands in the water, you know? And so likewise, when I was leading meditation classes off the trail or online, I would also bring in elements of nature. You know, we can experience nature by being right at home, bringing in house plants, running our hands under the water, really feeling a sense of the flow of water, and how we can take a cue from nature by being still, by being rooted, by being in the flow, you know, of the water, and feeling the air on our skin and just being receptive to change and to fluctuations and all that stuff. So it's been a really great and surprising experience, just going into these different avenues that have made a way for deeper exploration and engagement and connection, with people, and myself, with myself too.
Yeah. Wow, what a journey.
Mm,
What an
mhm,
adventure. Now
mm.
you're taking other people on adventures.
Yeah, well, you know, the an interesting thing is that we have internalized, we meaning people, have internalized so much from our parents, from the culture, from, you know, whatever it is. And if we're not willing to really look at, hey, what do I, or examine, what do I believe, or why do I believe that, then we're just kind of stuck doing the same things that we've always been doing. And certainly with the media is not saying to women over 30 or over 25, you know, hey, go out and explore nature, go out and really test yourself, or meet yourself in a new context, or dream again, or uncover some of those dreams that you've had, you
Yeah.
know, learn something. So it feels wonderful to be in a position where I can invite women into a space like that. Hey, let's go out. You never been hiking before, you never been backpacking or camping or trail running or whatever, let's go do it. We can do it. We've got some gear for you. We've got training and expertise in a certain, you know, in these areas, and we want to create a safe space for you to have a new adventure on your own terms. Because here in Colorado, there are lots of active people. It's always on the top 10 list, or a very, very short list of healthy cities of active people. And part of that is because there are lots of elite athletes who come to the area to train, and
Because
at
of the
altitude.
altitude, right?
But
Yeah, they're
yeah,
training at altitude. Yeah.
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 And I mean, and there are also many ways to enjoy the outdoors year round. And being able to share that with women demystifies the experience. It's not just the elite athletes. It's not just for certain groups or people who have a lot of money or people who look different than I do. It's for me if I want it as well. And oh my gosh, what can I do from there? I led a backpacking trip with a woman who was about to be a grandmother. She might have been in her 60s. And she said, I really want to be a badass Nana, but
I
I
love that.
have been, I've been really nervous about just sleeping outside and being just in nature. I haven't done it before. And then by the end of our trip, she said, now that I've done this, I can share this love of the outdoors with my grandson. I can be that badass Nana because I've experienced it firsthand. I can take him out now. And that's huge because that has thrown the door open for all kinds of adventure and exploration, not just on her own, but with her grandson. Yeah, a lot of times we hear, oh, the future generations or the kids are the only ones who get to play, or we've got to conserve this land for the kids. Well, what about for us right now? Like, we're the ones who are extending that love of nature, or who can facilitate, that love of nature by
And those
carrying
kids are
people out.
learning from us, right?
That's
That
right.
like I it's why I try to push myself to do the things that scare me, is because I want to
Yes.
be that example to my kids. I want them to see that they can keep exploring, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, New York, um, Phoenix, Philly, no. Thought maybe, no. Chicago, gave it a little try, no. And Denver, I mean, or Boulder, Denver, that area, you seem to have found community, and I think you said something earlier when you were talking about Chicago, that you didn't let yourself settle there, you didn't let yourself find community there. I find that an interesting thing, because I think sometimes we do stop ourselves from finding community. And but now what you've done is you've created your own community through the love of what you love to do
Mm-hmm.
and sharing that with other people.
Mm-hmm.
Has that, I mean, you found that first through nature, it sounds like, just through the location. Do you think that if you had just kept running and trail running on your own without this added component of bringing other people into it with you, do you think you'd feel as at home as you do?
No.
What
No.
prompted you? Like what was that germ of an idea that said I need to share this with others?
Well, because I realized how depressed, how sad and alone I'd been feeling.
Mhm.
And I also was learning how healing and restorative it was to be out in nature. And I'm a big relationships person, and so I felt like, okay, I can't be the only one who feels this way, or who feels like it's hard to to kind of gain any traction in Boulder or in a new place, and especially being outside of school. Because I had, well, by the time I was in Boulder, I was 3 years out of school. But when I was in Chicago, I still had that one friend and a couple
Mhm.
others along the way. But it was in Colorado where I realized, oh, I don't know anybody really except this. guy that I worked for. and
Right.
and I had one acquaintance. And so that really incentivized me to put feelers out to for cultivating community, because I felt like there are so many upsides to being in nature, and also to reaching out to extend myself to others, that that's going to that's going to be fruitful for me. And I
What did
think,
you? Oh, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
well, I felt like, it was really the incentive, because I was feeling sad, and I was also feeling happy about having discovered nature for myself. And so I was like, okay, this is so transformative. I want to at least see if there are other people out here who would be interested. And then that's how it grew. And then I started volunteering with a women's outdoor organization, or I started doing some guiding for an outdoor group. And then somebody found me through there who was like, hey, can you volunteer uh with our girls after school climbing program? And then, oh, can you do this? And and then I started managing a program at that organization to help women get out and explore and have new adventures. So anyway, yeah. You were asking me a question.
I think you may have answered the question, which is I was wondering, well, how did you start? Like, did you put up flyers? Did
Mm,
you did you send did you put something on Craigslist? Like, what did you
mm-hmm.
do to start the reach out? And is that it? Is that you started working with organizations that were already in place and volunteering?
I did a little bit of all of it. It
Uh huh.
was the What's the official name? The spaghetti against the wall technique.
Sketty throwing. I have a friend who calls that sketty throwing.
Spaghetti throwing.
Yes.
That's what I did. And because I said, all right, I have a day job, but this is also very important to me. And so whatever I do, I want to do it because it's a passion of mine, not because I'm trying to make money for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was me getting on Meetup. I told a friend about it, like, I'm thinking about doing this. And she was like, yeah, let me know. And I'll join the group when you start it. And then a year later, it took me a year to finally like put it into motion. So I got on Meetup. I said, hey, here here's the thing. I love to bring women together. Let's go out together. Let's learn together. And I was inviting other women to come, like, share their expertise. Maybe we'd do workshops and learn from this woman in the group, and maybe we'll share information. And so that was one way, meetup. And then another thing that I did too was I volunteered as a guide. I saw that there was an organization coming to Colorado, and that was Outdoor Afro, which is a national organization with different chapters, uh, or organizations, different groups around the country. And they were coming to Colorado, and I was like, I want to help found the Colorado. I want to be a guide in Colorado. So I was a co-founder for the Colorado group, and started taking people out, men and women, whoever wanted to join, like going out camping and hiking. And so I was like doing that as well. Someone reached out to me from there, hey, can you come speak about this particular thing? Hey, can you volunteer with, we've got this great outdoor or after school program for girls. And so I started working with them, and then I started doing some speaking, and then I started doing some teaching, and then started managing a program to bring women out into nature. So again, like the being open to change and open to exploring new avenues, and also following, what was interesting to me. I heard the guy who wrote the guy who was Joseph Campbell, he said, he was credited with saying, follow your bliss. And I heard him in an interview once say, I should have said, follow your blisters, because it requires the work. As you just said a few moments ago, like, it requires you to step out and sometimes step away from all that you know, and to be courageous and even do things while you're afraid in order to, like, gain the experience or the end result that you seek.
Yeah. What I love about what I'm hearing about this progression is the progression from an interest to wanting to share that to, well, here I'll do this little thing, and then that little thing turns into another little thing, and so on and so on and so on. And before you know it, you're speaking, you're teaching, and then you're founding. I mean, it's it starts with the baby steps, right? It's like, just if people could just follow those instincts without like needing to know what the end is, how juicy is that, you know?
Yes, it's juicy, it's spicy.
Uh-huh.
And I think a big part of it too is, I think one of the harder things, well, I know one of the harder things for me was not attaching my idea of success to money or to any kind of numbers. Because uh, as you know, my Instagram account was hacked, and I thought, oh my gosh, what if I'm no longer, well, how can, and if what if it's all up in smoke because hackers got to my account and everybody falls away and I have no more platform. And I said, think what's really important here is to think about and return to what matters in the first place. It's sharing the stories, it's connecting with people. And because of that connection, pretty much everybody said to me, oh, I know that wasn't you who was reaching out asking for this scammy stuff or wanting them to send me links or whatever, because they knew that over time, over the years, what I built up stands apart from any of the social media business or any of the numbers or
You've built
whatever.
trust. You've built a trust with the people who are following you and are into what you're doing, you
And
know?
and a presence, a reputation. And that's not easy to see going in, because like going in, if we're thinking about creating something, oftentimes there's, well, how is this going to feed me? How can I
Absolutely.
get the numbers and
That's
all
where the
that?
fear-based approach comes in, right? Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
constantly fighting that. It's like the good angel and the bad angel on the shoulder, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the good angel is like, "No, just go spread the word. Go talk, go do
Mm-hmm.
the messaging. Go get this done." And then the other part's like, "Well, how am I
Right.
going to keep doing this if I don't make money? And how am I, and yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And and it's like, okay, if this is something that I love, can I do it if I don't get paid? Is this something that was a thing for me, because I'd already had a full-time job and I started it out of passion. And I tried to, like, okay, the formula says I need to be posting this much, I need to be here, I need to be there. And instead it's like, what matters? How can I still pursue this with joy and with that same focus? Not to say that it doesn't get hard or tiresome sometimes, but if we're not driven or led around by, the externals, because that angel, the good angel, is sometimes whispering, whereas the other one might be beating a drum, and yeah, it might be very loud. And sometimes it's about, let's just be still here and think about it and feel into, like, what's going on, like, why are we doing this? Am I doing it to fill in the blank. Am I doing it for purposes other than ones that are really um useful or beneficial
Or
to me and to
filling
others?
your heart with joy, I'm going to say, because I think that's,
Exactly.
I'm putting words in your mouth, but
Nope. Yeah,
yeah.
they were already, yeah, those words
Okay.
were in my mouth. Yes. So,
Oh my goodness. Wow. And then, so you are also the founder of the Black Women's Alliance of Denver, right? Can you talk
mm-hmm,
about that a little bit?
mm-hmm. So, so Black Women's Alliance was that was the women's group that I started years ago when I was in Boulder, because I said, okay, what I can't be the only one out here, not just the only Black woman, but the only one who is feeling kind of out of sorts at being in a new place and at not having community and wanting something different than maybe just the happy hour or the Sex in the City weekend cocktails or whatever. Like, who wants to go out and get dirty, you know? And so, in addition to that, there were lots of wonderful women's groups in the area. Boulder, Denver, in this metro area, there seems to be a great support and receptivity to startups and to the entrepreneurial spirit. And they're very generous in sharing resources and tips and training with each other. And I thought, wow, let's have a space where Black women can do that too, and where we can have a safe space to also share about experiences of um that we might not be able to otherwise share in different kinds of organizations that were around benefiting professional women, or just women in the workplace. And so, for example, somebody wants to touch my hair, or somebody is uh saying that I can't get ahead of of my name, or they can't pronounce my name, or there's this or that thing going on, these various challenges. Um, and so, not that, BWA, the Black Women's Alliance, was going to solve for all of that. But the thing is that having a place to come together to talk about it and to not feel like we were under the scrutiny of that kind of gaze was really healing too. And I said, okay, let's open it up and see who is
Yeah.
interested. And that's part of, learning from each other in the group. Hey, what's your experience? What's not only what's your experience here in Colorado, what's your professional experience? Do you have something that you want to share? And we can share that with the group so we can learn from you. And so it was a way to create a support system. And over time, it started to shift more toward nature, or getting out into nature, as I started guiding more in the outdoors and teaching more around mindfulness, and seeing other organizations pop up around supporting women of color in business. I was like, okay, I'm not a business incubator. Let's stick to, again, like, what's bringing me joy, what's still really useful and viable here. And then over time, I started working with a partner offering these different workshops and outings and stuff. And we renamed it Black and Brown Women's Alliance, because there were women of color were coming and were welcomed. And so let's have it be more reflective of what we're doing. And so now we're offering more mindfulness oriented events. And so that might be a healing hour, a virtual healing hour where we come together and share meditation practices or wellness practices. We go out together into nature, we camp, we backpack, we have an annual retreat, that sort of thing. So
Amazing.
yeah.
Amazing. You have created that you have created the community that so now you're not the only person that looks like you
Mm-hmm.
out
Mm-hmm.
there, right? That's got to be so empowering to have created community.
I and that's so when you asked about creating community, um, if I had done that in Chicago, I would still be there, or in Phoenix, maybe I would still be there. But there are certain chapters in our lives where we're only ready for what we're ready for. We're
Mm,
working on a certain thing at a time.
absolutely. We're not the same person. I mean, so often,
No,
I sit and think about what I want, and I've got some list from 5 years ago, and I'm still thinking that's what I want, but
right,
is it? Some of
right.
it might still be
Mm-hmm.
relevant and some of it might not because you can't step into the same river twice, and
Exactly.
you got to keep checking in with what's current, with what is the current flow. I'm going to go with that water theme, the current of
Yeah,
the water.
love
Uh,
it. Yes.
what is current for you and what is flowing within you today and right now,
Yeah,
right?
that's the examination, right? The
Yeah.
inquiry. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I'm just so glad that your Instagram feed got hacked, Christy. That's so terrible. I'm so selfish.
Me too, because that facilitated the like actual meeting and this conversation. So yes.
This conversation has been amazing. Thank you for being part of this. And is there anything that's coming up for you that's exciting right now?
So as we're sitting here in late July, I'm preparing for a 3-day retreat with the program that I run, the Trailblazers program. So, and Women's Wilderness, where we're going to have 3 days in the Rocky Mountains with instructors just sharing all kinds of outdoor courses and expertise. And we're going to
Sounds
have
awesome.
s'mores, we're going to hike, we're going to breathe together and stargaze. And it's just a wonderful way to bring women together in this adventure experience and just really get to kind of meet each other where we are. And so I feel so grateful and excited that I'm able to really collaborate with people to share this experience, with all women who want it. So that feels really good to me. And yeah, working along those lines doesn't actually feel like work. So yeah, that's what I'm very excited about.
Congratulations on having found that thing that doesn't feel like work. That's amazing. That's what I would want for anybody.
Me
Oh, that's
too.
amazing. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you, Christy, if they want to know more about you?
Well, I am at KristePeoples.com, which is KristePeoples.com, and the same on Instagram, Kriste Peoples.
Awesome. Awesome. And I will have that in the show notes for people. So if you're driving right now, don't worry about it. Just go to the show notes and you can find all that. And
Mhm.
I can't thank you enough.
Thank you. Thank you so much for reaching out, for giving me this opportunity, and for following your own bliss and curiosity, because without that, we wouldn't have come to this place. And if I can just say one thing to your listeners, it would be to just take one step in the direction of that dream. And even if it's not a dream, if it's something that you're curious about, take one step in the direction of that curiosity, because it can change everything.
Amen.
And it's never too late.
Never too late. I love it. I love it. Thank you again so much. Well, there you have it. I think we can all take a page from Kriste's playbook. Man, when she's interested in something, she dives in and commits to learning about it. She went from graphic design and singing to creative writing, and then meditation and trail running, and finally teaching others and creating community around her interests. You know, the path to what's meant for us isn't always a straight path. When we look at someone else's results, we don't see the windy path that brought them to their success. We always look at it and think, oh, they just got there straight on. So anyway, if you are feeling antsy and you know you need a change, but you aren't sure what to do, try sitting down with a pen and paper and make a list of what you're interested in and what you want to learn more about. And don't limit yourself, just write, daydream, put it on paper. And then look at your list and see what jumps out at you. Maybe gives you a little butterfly in your stomach. And I'd recommend starting with something that seems easy, like low-hanging fruit, as it were. Do a little research to see what else you can learn about it. Are you a DIY type? You know, you might be able to find a YouTube tutorial. There's something for everything out there. And maybe you would do better in a group. So are there any local classes you could take? Are there any online classes that you could take, or communities? One of the big takeaways I got from my conversation with Kriste is that once she found trail running and mindfulness, she naturally wanted to share it with others. And the last missing component for her was a sense of community to help her feel settled and at home in the Denver area. Isn't it always connections to other people that are key to making us feel at home? Community, that's where it's at. That's what I'm finding out as I go along this journey. I am so tired of trying to figure things out by myself. So that's why I started the Midlife Uprising community for women, to create a safe space where we can talk about the particular challenges that women face as we get older and reimagine what's possible as we age. So we get together for an hour on Zoom every month to shake things up and shine a light on it. Women of any age are welcome. The only requirement is a desire to make waves as you age. So if this sounds exciting to you, I'm officially inviting you to join us. Our next get-together is October 11th at 9 o'clock Eastern Time. You can find out more at midlifeuprising.com, and feel free to get in touch with me if you have any questions about the program. Hey, if you are interested in learning more about Kriste's programs or the Midlife Uprising community, you can go to latebloomerliving.com and click on the show notes for episode 112. I'll have links to more information for you there. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you have a fantastic week. Stay safe and well. Talk soon.